Today, I have a very interesting guest with me here today. I'm with Steve Richard from ExecVision, and they're doing something very interesting. They're helping you to continuously improve on your sales and clients conversations. Steve is the chief evangelist and also the co-founder of ExecVision, and it's basically a conversation intelligence platform that helps to basically helps you to learn from the interactions with your existing customers and bringing them into your further activities such as marketing, support, and sales. But we want to learn from Steve much more about this today. So therefore, welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Lucas.
Yeah, very good. So maybe, I gave a small overview, but I'm sure you're going to be able to do this much more concise and better. So what is ExecVision all about in your own words?
I'll tell you what, I'll draw a parallel with what your technology does is for those website visitors, it's giving you a lot of that information and allowing you to convert them through the dark funnel, sometimes people call that, to a point of being known. And that's really where the sales conversation starts. And initially, in most cases, for most companies, that's going to be maybe a sales development rep or a business development rep, BDR, SDR, LDR. Sometimes it's the salesperson directly. It doesn't matter. But really, that same rigor that you have of using data for decisions in the funnel is the same kind of data that people are lacking when it comes to what's happening in our sales calls. It's a black box. We don't know. I mean, your software might work great. Their funnel and marketing might be working great, generating great leads, but then the great leads are falling apart. They're not being called in a lot of cases, or if they are being called, what are the salespeople saying to them to get them converted? And then from that unscheduled call to the scheduled call. So what our software is doing is ingesting these calls, the recordings of the conversations themselves in a compliant way with GDPR, CCPA, all the other things, and then transcribing them and doing additional analysis with machine learning and AI to identify parts of the calls that are relevant, that matter, what's happening across all of our calls at scale. And then most importantly, once we know if maybe our salespeople just are not very good at closing for next steps, or maybe our salespeople are they know they're supposed to be qualifying, we trained them, we certified them, but they're not asking the qualification questions they're supposed to be. And as a result, we got a lot of junk in our funnel. Our software is going to tell you that, A, and then B, help you change behavior. And that's the key. You gotta actually train and coach those people so that they do it better the next time around. That's the reason we measure why a sprinter is, when they're running, why do we measure it? So they can go faster next time. Same with salespeople, so they can be better next time.
Very good. And what would be the typical types of companies that would be, using the technology, or who would be the champion within those companies? Like, how does a company take on ExecVision?
Usually it's companies that have 20 or more people on the phone, or doing online meetings like on Zoom, like we're on today. And then it's usually the second level leader. And let me explain what I mean by that. I founded multiple companies, and when you initially start a company before the pandemic, and you're all sitting in the same room for the most part, it's pretty easy to know what's going on. But then after that happens, once you start growing to 20, 30, 40 people, you don't really know what's going on. And you depend on that first level manager, the manager that manages those reps. And they're asking questions. These leaders that manage those managers are asking questions like, well, are my managers even coaching? If my managers are coaching, is it working? Who's getting the coaching? Who's not getting the coaching? Are my teams on message? Are they using our messaging at all? And if they're even using it, are they using it in the right way? As I mentioned before, with qualification or also discovery questions, are they reps asking them? Are my reps talking too much? So there's all these questions that kind of second level leader, the person who manages the managers, usually has, and that's the sweet spot for us.
Very interesting. And this type of sweet spot that you were describing, right? Through which journey do they go through in order to actually, get to know about ExecVision, get it started? Like, what would be the typical maybe client acquisition channels that you would be using?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of word of mouth, a lot of referral, a lot of following our customers from one company to the next, which is big, and then a lot of targeted advertising on LinkedIn to just that persona. So it's not like anybody would use this. Someone who's a real estate agent that just sits at home and makes calls on their cell phone, probably not a fit for what we're doing. So casting a big, broad marketing net and dragging a big net through the ocean and catching a bunch of little itty bitty fish is just not what our business is built on. It's not how we operate. but it's really being thoughtful and selective on if there's a good account profile, and then identifying the right people within that account profile and getting smart like that. So far the best strategy has actually been LinkedIn, still LinkedIn paid ads.
Very cool. Very cool. That will probably encourage a lot more folks again to look into LinkedIn ads.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. For this, it makes sense. For other people, it doesn't make as much sense. I've done a lot of training and consulting, and sometimes I would advise against, but in this case, it does work.
Mm-hmm. Which role does the website then play? If they're, for example, coming through channels like LinkedIn, what role does the website play for client acquisition?
Yeah, great question. So the once they come off of LinkedIn and then they get to the website, obviously, funnel conversions on the website are really important. We're working with a company called Caspera right now that helps to identify some of those anonymous visitors and qualify them based on some questions, and then bring some additional insights. Content marketing is very important, as you can imagine, and then look for the conversions that way. Yeah.
Very good. Talking about the website, you brought up some examples there. What you're already doing using some visitor identification. What would you say is the major strength of the website right now? Is it the ability to convert once somebody's hitting the website? Is it maybe the quality of the leads that you generate, or just the experience that you provide? Where do you see a strength on the website?
It's the content, the strengths in the content, and we do, I think, a pretty good job of converting. Although we know there are a lot of anonymous visitors that are not converting today, and any company that doesn't have that, or doesn't say they have that challenge, I think they're fooling themselves based on how buyer behaviors change. That you've got people that are coming around and snooping around. Now, I'll give you another tactic that's actually worked quite well for us lately, which is we've just started testing this, but using the smart links feature on LinkedIn, believe it or not. And the thing that's nice about it, it goes to a little bit of the whole drift value proposition of no web forms. They're like anti-web form. So what you're doing with smart links is you're taking a content piece and you're uploading it into smart links on LinkedIn. And then when you send it, or someone just finds it or whatever it might be, and they click on it, you get notified of that person. And because they're already logged in on LinkedIn, you can already see who it is. It becomes a identified prospect very quickly. So that's worked well because it's the best of both worlds. You don't have to have the form, and at the same time, you're gathering the information, and there's much less friction for the buyer. They're more willing to click on that content piece.
Very good. Very interesting strategy. On the flip side, right? Where do you see the biggest room for improvement on the website at the moment?
The anonymous web visitors, but here's the challenge. The challenge with us is we don't know. And what I mean by that is, and I'm just being really forthright here, I'll tell you, if we don't have the answers for something. Sometimes I listen to podcasts and nobody says that, but
appreciate that.
We know that there are web visitors that are anonymous because the Google Analytics and Marketo Analytics and everything tell us that. So it's not hard to figure that part out. But what we don't know is if the anonymous visitors on the website are the right kinds of people. So if it's the right kinds of prospects with the right kinds of personas at the right types of accounts, boy, we really want to know who they are. You know what I mean? We really don't want them to be anonymous. But if it's just sort of rank and file, and it's companies that are not a good fit because they don't have enough salespeople, they don't have enough customer success people, they don't have enough support people, they don't have a critical mass. Our ideal customer profile is you got to have a critical mass of people either on the phone or doing online meetings, web conferencing meetings like Zooms, where you have to drive consistency. If you don't care about driving consistency, it doesn't matter. A company that has 10 enterprise sales reps that sell 7-figure deals, this is not for them. They don't. Driving consistency on how they do that's probably not relevant. The idea of listening to even 1 minute of a recorded Zoom meeting is probably, not realistic. So instead, we're looking for those organizations and making sure that they're, in line with our customer base and how we can help. So I think that's the hard part is like there's a hypothesis around the, people who are coming to our website, and then people who are not converting against the calls to action we're trying to get them to, request a demo, request more information, pricing, all that stuff. But in reality, this traffic might not be good traffic anyway that we don't want to capitalize on. So that, I think for anybody who's going to be more of an account-based, I hate using the term because it's so cliche, but if you're going to be more account-based oriented where the whole world is not your oyster, there are some parameters around people who can buy versus can't buy. Then all of a sudden, the website conversions they're just more challenging. They just are.
Very good. Anything that you could maybe share with us that you guys have already been trying in order to sort of increase that conversions or know about the traffic better?
The only one so far is that Caspera that I mentioned to you before.
Gotcha.
And preliminarily, we have a few things that we've seen that have been positive, but by and large, what we're seeing is that the people they're not converting against it, or if they are, it's not the right types of fish. Mm-hmm. So we're still working on it. We're still working on it.
Coming back to the product, right? And for everybody who's listening in, what would you say is the main competitive advantage of using ExecVision?
The main competitive advantage is right now, there are all these conversations that are happening in your business and you have absolutely no idea what people are saying, and you're never going to listen to every minute of every call. So to think that you can run a business in this day and age, and 2020 when we're recording this, and not hear the voice of the customer, the voice of the buyer, and not hear and not also be able to see in analytics that your salespeople are talking 80-90% of the time. They're just doing the show up and throw up on people. They're missing buying signals. Being able to actually see and identify that, being able to actually know if are your managers committed to call coaching or not. It's no longer a nice to have. It's a need to have, especially with people working from home.
Very cool. Since you guys are very obviously experts, on the sales side of things, I would be curious, if we look behind the curtain of ExecVision, like what would the sales and the marketing team be structured like at the moment?
It's classic SaaS. I wish I could say we have some great secret sauce. So a couple of SDRs, so 2 sales development reps, 3 account executives, 3 customer success managers, 2 support people. Everybody is customer facing, plus me as a founder and a guy named Scott Shaw, our chief revenue officer. So it's actually pretty standard and pretty simple along the lines of SaaS best practices because it's optimized. I mean, there's a reason that this is an optimal model. Average deal sizes, average customers somewhere between 20K up to 100K in that neighborhood. And then the contracts, that's the contract size. And then an individual per user license, low end $50 per user per month, high end $100 per user per month, depends on volume, like you'd expect, depends on other add-on services and things.
Gotcha. And you brought up the SDRs and the account managers there. So if a lead, right, is coming to the page and signing up, could you walk us through the process? Like what happens?
Yep, they get notified. They're calling. A shout out to our friends at a company called DialSource. Love DialSource. So they're being notified via Marketo. They're calling that person within 5 minutes of them hitting the website, assuming it's a good one. They're doing a little bit of research prior to that. They're booking the meeting. After they book the meeting, they'll hand that off to an account executive. Actually, this is an important point for someone like us that has a lot of qualification. Some businesses have a low degree of qualification. Some businesses, unfortunately like us, have a high degree of qualification because the world is not our oyster. So we taught our sales development reps to ask what are called overtime questions. Mm-hmm. And overtime questions are after you book the meeting, you say, Lucas, do you mind if I ask you a few quick questions? And then you say, sure, go ahead. Or you say, in order to make the best use of your time, can I ask you some questions? Mm-hmm. And that's when you ask those specific questions you're looking for.
Interesting. And is that at the beginning of the conversation or at the end?
So this is interesting because most sales development reps try to do that prior to booking the meeting, but the problem is it frequently jeopardizes the meeting, and immediately the buyer feels like this is going to be an interrogation. Mm-hmm. I don't want an interrogation. So the key to the whole thing is book the meeting first, then ask overtime questions next. Does that make sense?
Very much so. Very much so. I would love to switch gears and learn about you as a leader in the business a little bit. What's the type of content that you consume in order to educate yourself?
I'm going to give you a strange answer. So I used to read tons of sales books and everything, but lately it's been more psychology. And actually I do these daily tips. So connect with me on LinkedIn, Steve, last name Richard, just like it sounds, ExecVision, should be easy enough, EXEC Vision to find me. When you connect on LinkedIn, even if you're not in our ideal customer profile, still connect. I do these daily 1-minute tips of the day. Mm-hmm. So that was redundant, daily tips of the day, 1-minute tips a day. And the one I did today was on this thing called the Asher effect, the Asher experiment in psychology, which is all about groupthink. So basically what they did is they put a bunch of people together in almost like a table, a long table, 6 people. And 5 of the 6 are Confederates, meaning they're actually in cahoots with the researchers. And one of them is not, that's the volunteer. And they'll show these people these lines. and they say like, okay, how long is this line compared to these other lines? And it's like obvious, like line over here, and then like A, like B, and then C. And you're like, well, it's obviously C. And they do this several times and everybody gets the same answer. And then after that, the researcher starts to have the Confederates intentionally saying the wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
And in a remarkably high percentage of the time, the person that's not in cahoots starts saying the wrong answer also.
Mm-hmm.
They become actually convinced, and they'll even show them later on. They're like, no, it's definitely that one. And it's like anybody looking at would see it's not that one. You know what I mean? But because the group think sets in, so it's a psychological principle. And that's the kind of stuff I'm really into right now. And how do you apply that to sales? And how do you apply that to strategies? And then ultimately the day-to-day tactics that you use.
Very cool. Awesome. And what would be, I mean, you brought up the topic there already of a recent post. So thanks for sharing that. So everybody who's interested, as just Steve mentioned, hit him up on LinkedIn, and you can see that daily tips coming into your feed. I would be loving to switch to our rapid fire questions since we're slowly coming to an end of the interview already. Would you be ready for those?
Hit me.
Very good. So what's the last book that you read?
Last book that I read was it was Sales Coaching by Linda Richardson. Boom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Took me a while.
What's the one single thing that the company is focused on the most at the moment?
Honing in and really laser focused on the ideal customer profile, and otherwise losing fast. So if you're not dealing with your ICPs, lose fast.
Yeah. If there would be no boundaries in technology, what would be one thing that you would want to have fixed for the company today?
If there are no boundaries for technology today, one thing I'd want to have fixed, I would want to have a way of determining who the ideal customer profile is prior, because that sifting of sand takes a lot of time and money.
Yeah, very true. What's the last thing that kept you awake at night about the company?
Moving someone from a BDR role to a customer success role, and hoping that we called it right, which we did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the very last question would be, if today would be your very first day working on ExecVision, right? So you just, I don't know how you started, maybe in the garage, maybe in a single office, depends. The very first day you being working there, what's the one advice that you would give yourself?
Hire ahead of product.
Okay. Would you mind to elaborate a little bit?
We just don't have one. And it was a decision we made a long time ago. And we kind of opted to have more devs and people writing code than a product leader. And I think in retrospect, it would have been better to have a product leader.
Makes sense. Steve, I really appreciate that you took the time with us today to speak about ExecVision. And I want to give you the last word. What would be the one thing people should remember about the company if they forget everything else about this interview?
If you forget everything else, sales conversations, customer facing conversations really matter a lot more than you think you do. And there are huge gains to be had by optimizing what people say on the phone when they're talking to prospects and customers.
Very good. Thanks for being part of the show.
Thanks, Lucas.